And I apologize for flying in here a minute or so late. Hope everyone's doing well. Matthew, do we have a declaration to read given the changes that have happened in COVID precautions and whatnot? Are we still?
No, I don't believe so, Kelly. We're still obviously working under the same arrangement as we have, but I believe the executive order has been lifted. But for now, we're still, obviously we're doing virtual meetings until we get further notice from City Council on how they'll be running their meetings as well. Kelly, am I getting that right?
We, at least for our other meetings, we're waiting to see when council restarts their hybrid format before we restart ours.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So welcome everyone. It is June somehow. Feels like we blinked and went from January to June. So I'm feeling a little crunched by that. First up, minutes from last month's meeting. Hope everyone saw those and had a chance to review. Do we have any updates, changes, omissions to the minutes from May? No. A motion to approve those?
I make a motion to approve.
Thanks. And sorry, was that Carol who motioned?
This is Donna. This is Donna.
Okay, thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Michael, thank you.
Okay, and I will run through the roster for voting. Greg, Aaron, how do you vote? Sorry, I didn't hear anything.
Approve.
There we go.
Sorry.
That's right. Daryl Hoover, how do you vote? Carol, can you hear me okay? Carol? Okay. Oh, see, Carol's video just went away. Michael made the second. Donna made the motion. Scott's not attending. Sharon, how do you vote?
Approved.
Right. And AJ?
Approve.
All right. The item passes.
Okay, great. Thank you all.
And Sharon, I don't know if I see Carol's having it looks like some technical issues with her connection maybe, but I don't know if we wanted to do a quick introduction for her before we got into some of the other items.
I was going to do that along with just a little bit of an update and conversation around not just why Carol is here, but some other committee member updates and changes. While Carol gets reconnected, there she is. We had, for most of you all, we applied to be part of this committee in probably January of 2020. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I got a call in February of 2020 with some questions from someone from City of Winston-Salem. And then I didn't hear anything until late summer when we got an email from someone who was running for political officer congratulating us on having been selected. And of course, in that time, COVID hit. And so we were dealing with and are still dealing with all of the upheaval that has come with living through a global deadly pandemic. And I think that created personal changes, it created professional changes, it created routine changes. All of our lives were impacted in some way. So we had one committee member who immediately upon notification that they've been selected, just said right off the bat, I'm sorry, but my life no longer allows me to participate. And so with that, the City Council approved just this week Carol Hoover who replaces that original committee member. Carol, can you now hear us? I'm afraid my computer issues were contagious. I'll keep going.
I think Carol's on. Yeah, Carol's muted right now. Carol, I don't know if you can unmute yourself. I don't know if that's the issue, but that might be. There you go. Oh, I saw you had unmuted for 1 second there. Okay.
And then, Matthew, do you want to introduce her on her behalf, or we can save that until she comes back on?
Yeah, let's give Carol a chance to introduce herself.
I'll keep going then, just on some other changes. The other, was that you, Carol? No, okay. So we also have now John Gunkel, who has been such a wonderful active member of this committee, and had also been placed on another committee under City Council. I believe it's the Parks and Recreation Committee. And he was notified right after our May meeting by the city, letting him know that kind of an oops, they goofed, and you can't serve on two committees. And so he has now been taken off our group. And of course, John hates that as much as we do, I'm sure. He would like to stay involved, and I think he'll be a good liaison, because I think there will be some crossover with that committee, but we've now lost him as a member. We also have two committee members who haven't been able to attend. And in our commitment that we were given, there are some guidelines on attendance. And so I'm just going to, as we're discussing this, in missing two or more meetings without checking in and providing reasons, without a written excuse or an excuse that's approved by the committee, we do have the option to replace people who haven't been in attendance. And so both of these individuals I've reached out to and have only just recently heard back from. One has family medical issues that she's dealing with, and the other is dealing with the onslaught of the pandemic as our Department of Public Health leader. Both have indicated that they would like to stay involved. And so I think as a committee, we need to decide what that looks like. Do we have leeway for people to remain participants in a different way? Do we as a committee feel like we need to take a moment to regroup and allow a different level of participation from those people who can't attend as a volunteer capacity or some other maybe non-official capacity, and replace them with members who would like to attend more regularly? And I'll just pause there and open that up to any comments from this group. Basically, we could vote to remove them, or we could figure out some hybrid format.
Remind me what the term for this committee is.
So for regular members, the 11 voting members, it's either 2-year or 3-year term, and it breaks it down. It seems to be a random selection. Some are five of us are slotted for 2-year terms, and the other 6 are slotted for 3-year terms.
So did those folks indicate, well, it sounded like you only talked to one, but did they indicate that like just now's not the time, but they, it sounded like they do want to stay involved, but do they see that their schedule's going to evolve to where they can be, physically present and involved?
I would say, honestly, I don't expect either of their situations to change significantly. They have an interest and they have a passion around the topic. But as far as availability, I'm not sure that either will be able to be physically present more often than they have been.
Sharon,
Is it possible? Go ahead, AJ. I'm sorry.
oh, sorry. I was just going to ask, is it really a commitment with this scheduled time, or is it that there's not time to maybe work and contribute at all throughout, month to month?
Yeah, that's a great clarifier, AJ. I do not think it's a time specific issue. I think it's it's more of a general life issue.
I was wondering whether we could retain them, but have them designated as non-voting members, and they can contribute if they ever get some time to participate, but they wouldn't have a voting power. They'd be sort of a auxiliary or associate members, I guess, sort of technical advisors, or just citizens on the committee that have no voting privileges, I guess. So I sort of hate to get rid of them, I guess, in a formal way, if they still have an interest, and possibly their situation, I don't know, maybe in a few months might change, but or they might be able to participate by phone remotely or something else. I'm just tossing out the possibility that we could retain those individuals as non-voting members and recruit some other folks that would be voting members.
So we do already have 3 at-large members who are not voting members designated,
Okay.
and that's part of the structure.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know that.
No, that's okay. I had to reread all of that myself a couple of times to refresh my memory. So there was an ordinance that we are all under as members of this committee. I will say I had leaned towards some format of engagement that was not an official committee membership level engagement. I think both of these individuals could become involved in special projects once we get some momentum under our initiatives. I think they can be great advocates. I think the other thing to keep in mind that I noticed in rereading this is that the chair and vice chair positions are 1-year positions. And so we will actually be coming up on that in a couple of months. And so again, having strong people on the committee who are able to be present with regularity, I think would be really important.
So can we just promote the alternates to, I guess, a voting status? Is that what we need to do?
I think we would ask City Council to replace them. They have a list of applications. There were a number of people who had submitted applications and who are kind of in the wings, as Carol was. Matthew, you look like you were about to say something. Go ahead.
Sharon, that's correct. As an advisory committee, this group would, make a recommendation to City Council about, if there are members that should be removed, make that recommendation, and then City Council would take the action to officially either remove them or retain them, and then if they were removed, then replace them with individuals who had submitted applications as well.
Are the alternates on an official list then? Is that what I understand?
They're not really alternates. They just have other applications that they would go through.
Just the application. Okay. So they're not already designated for our committee as an alternate.
No, no.
Okay.
So I would be in favor of making that proposal to city council to get additional members, because you've made a couple of great points in terms of the change in the chair, vice chair. It just seems like we would probably benefit from having additional active participants on the committee right now. And for those who are not able to attend, I think you've come up with a great solution that they would not be on this committee, but they would be individuals that we would reach out to for special projects, just to keep them involved. So when their situations do evolve, that maybe down the line, they would be able to rejoin and really be able to bring some valuable information.
And one thing to note about that, these meetings are public, so individuals can join and participate and view the proceedings. That's they are open to the public.
And so go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask her if she was making that as an official motion, but go ahead, AJ.
Yeah, Donna, if you want to, I was going to ask if we need a motion for that.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to ask City Council to replace the current non-participants with 2 replacements. Sorry, my camera's off.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay. Thanks. I agree that never feels good to do, but I think this is probably in the best interest for the committee, and I think it allows these folks to do what they can in a different way, and I think they understand that as well.
Sharon, you may want to note just who those members are for the motion.
Sure. So that will be Cynthia Thompson and Joshua Swift.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. I'll go through the roster for votes for that. Greg, how do you vote for that motion?
Approve.
Carol, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Approve.
Okay. Michael?
Approved.
Sharon?
Approved.
Okay. I believe that was everybody. That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Carol, welcome. Now that we can hear you, I would love for you to just introduce yourself briefly and what your general interest is in this work. We're excited to have you.
Well, thank you. I think my interest has grown over the past several years. I've always been an avid bike rider. I've always been, in the past I've run, now I do a lot of walking. But in doing that, and I do it across the city, I live kind of west of town a little bit, but do live in town. But I guess it started, my interest in being involved in the government started when I did Leadership Winston-Salem. And I was trying to figure out what I might like the best. And because of my interest in being healthy and getting around the community and walking and riding my bike, I thought this would probably be the perfect commission to get involved in. So I'm excited to be here. I've already started looking through the pedestrian plan. That's a lot of reading to do and a lot to get caught up on, but hopefully I can be a valuable member to the committee.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll move on to today's topic, which will probably take up the majority, if not all, of the time that we have left. We had asked everyone to submit their priority recommendations around the Winston-Salem's bicycle master plan. And I believe Matthew is going to do a screen share. Are you showing slides, Matthew, as you talk, or just talking?
You know, I'll probably just talk, but I can show, you know, even if I just bring up Google Maps to show some of the locations of these projects or the bicycle plan itself, that either one would work.
Okay, great, thank you. So basically, we had recommendations from all the committee members around the if you're looking at the bicycle plan, it's chapter 7. I think there's an echo. If everyone could mute who's not currently speaking. And from those, I just tried to tally up based on what we received to look at what those key priorities were. Our top responses were the Parkland South connector, which was unanimous, the Northwest connector, which was almost unanimous, Renolda Link, which same was almost unanimous. And then we had some really strong middle range responses around Robin Hood Road, North Side Trace, the Eastern Trace, Long Branch, West Side Bike Boulevard, the Crosstown Connector, and also the Lawtown route. And so Matthew was just going to, from those that we had pulled together and in the weighted responses, Matthew was going to run through and provide some updates around some of the specifics, places where there is already some action in place or linked projects and that kind of thing. And so, Matthew, how do you want to do this? Do you want me to run through one by one?
Sure, yeah, that would be fine. Why don't we go just in order of in which they ranked for the committee?
Okay. Sure, so Parkland South, that was the one that was on everyone's list as a priority.
Right. And one thing I'll note is, you know, among the 10 or so priorities identified by this group, there's work underway on over half of those. So 6 of those projects, I believe it's 6, have funded projects associated with them, whether they're feasibility studies, engineering design, or actual construction funds. There's work underway for a majority of those projects, which is a good sign that the projects, you know, for which we're working on right now line up well with the priorities for this group. So that's part of what I wanted to do, is just share a quick update on some of the projects on what we're actually working on as it relates to these projects. So I think the Parkland South connector is a good place to start. I'm going to share my screen here.
That'd be great.
All right, can everybody see that screen? So this might be just a little bit difficult to show much detail on this, but you know, this includes Salem Lake and the existing Salem Creek Greenway. And what's shown as recommendations for future Greenway is an extension of that trail east of Salem Lake into Kernersville. And that's part of a planned regional greenway called the Piedmont Regional Greenway. So connecting Winston-Salem through Kernersville all the way to Greensboro. And each of those municipalities has their responsibility in that project. You know, obviously Winston-Salem can't design and construct Greenway for Kernersville or for Greensboro, and the same is true for those communities for us. So we've been working with them. A few years ago, we did a feasibility study to kind of dig in a little bit more on what it's going to take to actually design and construct part of that project, specifically the area from Kernersville towards the Forsyth County, Guilford County line. And so there's been a fair amount of work underway to make that connection and to build that greenway. But as far as what Winston-Salem can do with that project, as far as the design and construction goes, we have a funded project. It's funding through NCDOT, so some state and federal funding to design and construct the section east of Salem Lake between Linville Road and Hastings Hill Road. And at that point, that's nearly the boundary between Winston-Salem and Kernersville. So at that point, Kernersville, the town, will take over, and they have their own funded projects for design and construction of some of their segments. So I'm going to switch over to Google Maps here just to give you a better view of what I'm talking about. Sorry, it may just take me one moment to switch that. So can everybody see Google Maps now?
Yes.
I will turn on the bicycle layer so you can see the existing Salem Lake Trail around the lake. And the proposed project would extend Salem Lake east of, or the trail east of Linville Road along Kerner's Mill Creek, underneath Salem Parkway here, and to Hastings Hill Road. So that's a project that's funded. It's currently, our engineering department is designing that and preparing that project for construction. So that's kind of the eastern extent of the Parkland South connector. I think that's labeled as Parkland South Connector 4 within the kind of segment 4 within the bicycle master plan. So switching back over here, it's going to be a lot of switching back and forth. So I'll go back to the master plan now. So can everybody see the plan again?
Yes.
Okay. So existing, as you all know, probably the existing Salem Creek Greenway ends at Marketplace Mall. And the next phase of that then would be to get from Marketplace Mall, and kind of the next break point that we've selected is Forsyth Tech. So trying to connect, the existing trail to the Forsyth Tech area. And for that, we have a couple things going on, a couple different projects. One is we have funding in the state transportation improvement plan, so state and federal funding again, for construction of some greenway there between Marketplace Mall and Forsyth Tech. But there are some issues with constructing that. So as you all know, that the creek itself crosses Peters Creek Parkway and it crosses Silas Creek Parkway, which are two very busy, high-speed, high-volume roadways. And getting a trail through those corridors is a challenge. So one of the things we're doing right now, we have a feasibility study going on right now. We're working with an engineering firm to figure out how to cross those corridors and what opportunities there are for that. So, one of the nice features of the Salem Creek Greenway is that there are no required at-grade crossings right now. You can, take underpasses and bridges in all cases in order to bypass roadways. And that's something we would like to continue because it's a feature that I think a lot of greenway users appreciate about that trail specifically, and all trails, is that you have that separation from motor vehicle traffic. So we're working with that engineering firm right now to figure out what it would take to go underneath Peters Creek Parkway and underneath South Creek Parkway under those bridges along the creek. So there's that work, that feasibility study work that needs to be done before we get into design, just so we know what we're getting into when it comes to the design phase. So the next phase after that, then I believe, let's see, sorry. You can see how these are sectioned off. But the section that we have funding for right now is from Marketplace Mall to Forsyth Tech. And like I said, it's the feasibility study that's currently underway. And then once that's done, then we have some actual engineering design and construction funding available to take the next steps with that. So Sharon, I'm happy to answer any questions that people might have about what's going on with that project right now.
My first questions are the timeline. I remember seeing the article in the paper a couple of years ago about that extension from Limble Road to Hastings Hill. What's the timeline on construction starting and ending on that?
So I'll have to check.
Okay.
You know, since we have the engineering department is managing the construction of that, but I will check on that.
And then the same with the feasibility study. When would you have that back in hand to review on the Forsyth Tech segment?
I will inquire about that as well.
Thank you. Any other questions on those? AJ, were you going to say something? Okay.
I was not, no.
Okay. So the next one that was near unanimous was the Northwest Connector.
Right. So let me.
There's a lot of opportunity on this one.
While Matthew's looking for that,
Sure.
you know, you say it kind of falls once it gets to Hastings Hills Road. Is Kernersville, do they already have a plan to connect to the county line?
So they have, not necessarily to the county line, because there was some roadway construction going on there, but what they have funded, they have sections of the trail called Kerner's Mill Creek Greenway that they have funded and they have designed. So I would have to check with them on the timing of their project as well, but you know, there may be some gaps in between those two trails, and in which case you know, that would be the next phase, to either design or to find alternate routes, on-street routes through there. You know, there was some, if I remember right, some lower speed, lower volume streets that we could potentially use as a bike route to connect the two trail segments until that next, you know, that gap piece is funded and designed.
And do we know if Greensboro, are they actively working towards coming towards the county line as well?
I'm not sure how active. I'm not sure which projects, you know, what they have in terms of funding and where they are with design, but you know, I can certainly inquire with them and get some information about that.
Thanks.
Actually,
Matthew, I wanted to ask a quick question.
Sure.
From Hastings Hill Road toward Kernersville, did the state provide an area underneath the Northern Beltway to allow for that connection to be made? I think that was something we tried to work with them when I was on staff there, is to have that accommodation. But you know, the highway's been built through that section. I just wonder if we've double checked to make sure that connection can still be made.
Yeah, so that you're right, Greg. That was you know, part of the request, is they were, you know, nearly a decade ago, probably in some of their preliminary work on the Beltway, a request that we had made, and they did accommodate that. So we do have a way underneath the Beltway, because you're right. Otherwise, that's a huge barrier that we may not be able to get across.
Right. Okay. That's good. That's a step in the right direction, then. That's good.
Okay.
And I assume that the issues of getting underneath Salem Parkway have been resolved as well, the flooding and the culvert issues there. Is that right?
So that's part of the design. So, you know, for a long time, the issue was just getting approval from NCDOT to go underneath Salem Parkway, and that permission was granted. So, you know, part of the design project for that section of the trail, obviously, then is to figure out how to make that work, because the route that is being used wasn't designed as a trail culvert underneath Business 40. It was designed as a drainage culvert. So you know, there would need to be some modifications made to that to make it suitable as a trail corridor. So you're right, that's part of the design work that's going on now.
Good. Okay. Excellent.
So Northwest Connector was the next project, and let me share the screen for that. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
So this section ties in, you know, connects existing bike lane on Ronaldo Road and on Northwest Boulevard to the Brushy Fork Greenway in the Waterworks Road area and Bowen Boulevard area. And, you know, it's a nice east-west connection, you know, just north of downtown. So this is a project that we've designed the bike lanes and shared lane markings for Northwest Boulevard and 14th Street. And we have funding for that. What we're waiting on, there's a resurfacing project that's going to happen on Northwest Boulevard this year, this next round of resurfacing. So we are waiting on that to occur before we put the bike lane markings down, just so that we're not wasting resources on putting down markings and then having the street resurfaced a month or two later. So that's what's holding this one up right now. But we have designs that are approved. Essentially, we would have bike lane from Ronaldo Road on Northwest Boulevard all the way to nearly to Liberty Street in the Highway 52 area. And then east of there, we would have shared lane markings. It's a different roadway arrangement there. So we would have shared lane markings the rest of the way on 14th Street all the way to New Walkertown Road. So that covers, if you see these segments here, it's Northwest Connector 1, 2, and 3. And then segment number 4 here is actually on New Walkertown Road. And we're managing a project right now. I'm not personally doing it, but we have a project underway for New Walkertown Road to essentially provide some bike and walk and traffic improvements on New Walkertown from Martin Luther King Jr. Drive all the way to Northampton Drive. So that's a study that's underway, and what I will do, I will share information about that study and a way to get involved to the committee, maybe in the minutes or in a separate email. Sharon, I'll make sure we get that out.
Okay.
So that people can participate with that as well. So that's not as far along. You know, obviously that's just the study at this point, but the bike lanes on Northwest Boulevard and how Northwest turns into 14th Street, essentially, say east of Liberty Street. And we do have designs for that, roadway designs, and then funding for that as well. And that should happen within, as soon as that street is resurfaced, within the next several months. Any questions about this project?
Matthew, where did you mention that resurfacing was taking place? Is that all the way down Northwest?
Yeah, I don't recall the exact limits of the resurfacing for Northwest Boulevard, but it's a fair amount of that section, that, you know, enough of it that we wouldn't want to do the markings beforehand.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments on that one? Okay. Ronaldo Link was the other one. And again, this one was near unanimous.
Just give me one moment to find that. Can everybody see?
Yes.
Section. So this is another project with multiple segments in it. So five segments on this one, and I believe two of those segments 2 and 3, if you can see that clearly, are constructed currently. So there's bike lane on part of Ronaldo Road here. You can see this. It uses a combination of, I think it's West End Boulevard there and Hawthorne Road. But, parallel to West End Boulevard, we have Northwest Boulevard with bike lanes on it. And in Hawthorne Road, segment 5 within this section, that's a project for which we have funding and a design complete for shared lane markings on that section of Hawthorne Road. So it looks like from Academy Street here, on Hawthorne up to about Glade Street. And so a section of that, basically from Academy to First, is part of a larger Hawthorne Road project that we've designed and have funding for to put shared lane markings in on that road. So that section is being accounted for through that markings project. And then really the bigger challenge with this one, if potentially segment 4, if we can do something with West End Boulevard, we don't have any immediate plans for that or any funding for that. But segment 1 here, this northern section, is probably the biggest challenge as part of this project. So the existing bike lanes end near Kent Road, and I'm going to switch back to Google Maps and we can take a look at why that is there. So just one moment while I navigate to that spot.
Thanks for doing this.
Sure. So this is a project for which we receive questions and comments about pretty frequently, and I think it's worth exploring a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
All right, can everybody see Google Street View here? So this is where, if we're traveling back out of here, Ronaldo Road, if everybody's familiar with Mock Orange Bikes, bike shop down here, and that bike lane continues on Ronaldo Road up the hill, and then it ends at Kent Road. We'll bike through this for a moment. So you can see the bike lane is here. And then as we approach that intersection with Stratford and Kent, that bike lane ends. And, the reason for that is that as we get to Stratford Road, the roadway, the width does not change, but the lane configuration does. So we have a through and a right lane, a combined lane, and then we have a left turn lane, and then we have the southbound Ronaldo lane. So that's the reason for the ending of that bike lane there. We just run out of roadway width. And then when you get north of there, you can see the lane configuration and the southbound side. And we're kind of getting into some details here, but I think this is important for the group to understand. So there's a dedicated right turn lane, through lane, and a dedicated left lane. And then on the northbound side, the single through lane there. And this roadway changes configurations a number of times and then the next intersection is Coliseum Drive. So you can see it's a similar arrangement there, that dedicated right turn, a through, and a dedicated left, and then the single southbound lane. So it's kind of just, as we approach intersections, that configuration is just changing sides essentially. So as we get further north of Coliseum, we have the dedicated left turn lane that comes into play. And you can't see it on street view, but we also have this new bike and pedestrian crossing at the Grayland driveway and into Rinalda Village. So that's a kind of hard to see here, but you can tell there's this median island here with a high visibility crosswalk, some new bike walk connections from the driveway to that crossing, and then you can kind of see that path continues here in the crosswalk here. So this was a project that we worked with Wake Forest on, and to improve that crossing, this very popular crossing of Rinalda Road at Grayland Court there. So because of that median island, then that's consuming the center turn lane there. So the opportunity to put bike lanes in then goes away, but instead we have this brand new crossing, which obviously this street view is outdated. It's a couple years old at this point, so you don't see that. But imagine that median refuge island here, the one travel lane northbound and one travel lane southbound. So really the opportunity to put bike lanes in goes away without some kind of a road widening. And that arrangement, that median is, it's limited to this area here. But north of that, we still have this common turn lane, the center turn lane here. And so with that center turn lane, we don't have the room to put in dedicated bike lanes on this section of Rinalda Road. So that question has come up before of, why don't the bike lanes continue on Rinalda, and why do they stop at the Stratford-Kent intersection? Well, this is, the primary reason is that, we just don't have the roadway width to accommodate the turn lanes and the bike lane through here. So that means we could do some separate, another arrangement, whether it's shared lane markings or something else, to identify this as an important bike corridor, as it was in the bike plan, but working within the constraints of the roadway. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any about this and the opportunities. The other recommendation in the bike plan for this section, and I'll stop sharing this and go back to the bike plan. Can everybody see that again?
Yes. Yeah.
We had the main route on Rinalda Road here, but we also had this bike boulevard recommendation through the neighborhood, and using Arbor Road as that option, and Runnymede Road. And I don't know if any of you have used this route, but Arbor Road is a dedicated, it's a assigned bike route, and this bike boulevard route also uses, it comes through the Grayland property there, and to the crossing, that improved crossing that we just discussed. So, in addition to kind of the direct route on Rinalda Road, which, it is a direct route and it's going to serve, a certain group of cyclists, but there's also this alternative route that we could pursue on Runnymede and Arbor Road and through the Grayland property. And that's going to serve a different group of cyclists, the ones who may not feel comfortable riding on Rinalda Road, even with its bike lane. So that's what we tried to do with the bike plan, was we were looking at the different user groups within the cycling population to make sure that we were providing options and infrastructure options for different comfort levels. Because the folks who feel comfortable riding on Rinalda Road, they may want that direct, faster route. But the people who want to avoid traffic may feel more comfortable on Runnymede and Arbor Road. And I think that's that's a good topic of discussion for this group. As how do we make that decision on which of those we pursue, and how do we prioritize those different options for the different user groups that are out there. So with that, I'll stop. I'll turn it over back to you, Sharon, and
sure. I'd love to hear. Yeah, I'd love to hear comments on this. I think there's a ton of opportunity with this from a visitor and attraction tourism industry to be able to market and promote Winston-Salem as a destination where you can ride from downtown out to those key attractions that is out there. It's a connector for our universities, Wake Forest into city center. I also know that there's a lot of accident data along that road. I personally have a friend who was severely injured at that Coliseum intersection, who was clipped on her bike there. I know that this came up under the pedestrian plan also. I mean, as we see, there's sidewalk gaps out that area. So lots of opportunity here. I'd love to hear comments from the others.
I've got a few kind of thoughts, comments. So with that section on Ronaldo, that's, obviously we're bound by the size of the road. I mean, that would just be Sharrows. Would that be the solution for that area?
That's one option. Sure.
Okay. I guess my second thought is, you bring up the lack of sidewalks, and I know on both sides of that road, those are, I guess, Wake Forest property for the most part. I guess there's a section on the corner there, across from Ronaldo. Has anybody ever talked to folks there? Like, is there any interest in putting kind of a sidewalk or even a multi-use path through those sections that kind of run parallel to the road? I know there's tons of activity and there's plenty of places to walk off, like on natural surfaces in those areas. And as you could even see on the Google Maps, there's a path there on the right-hand side of the road, heavily trafficked by bikes and people, but it's certainly bumpy and tons of roots. And, on a road bike, that's not ideal. But if somebody's on a mountain bike, I used to live near there, so I used to ride that all the time. So to me, I guess, they have, whether they want to spend it or not, they certainly have the capital to kind of, at least match and provide I don't know if anybody's ever even brought that up to Wake Forest and if that's something they would be interested, because I believe they own Grayland as well, correct?
They do.
Okay.
So as it relates to that crossing, that was, they paid for that crossing, and we worked with them on the design of that. So we work with them, extensively on that project. Now, I don't think we've had specific discussions about a sidewalk there, but there's no reason we couldn't. But because we have a precedent now of working closely with them on making those kind of improvements. For the crossing that was just constructed.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I know we're in the bicycle master plan specifically, but that section of Ronaldo is really problematic for pedestrians. And I think on the street view, there's even a pedestrian, as you were clicking through, there's a pedestrian just south of Kent Road there walking in the traffic lane. So I think it's worth, I don't know what options there are. I understand you mentioned the width of the road is kind of a limitation, but I noticed the master plan does note dedicated bike lanes for section 1. Is that something that was denoted before that protected median and some other things that might prevent that from being a reality, or is that counting on the road being widened? Do you know?
Yes, this plan predates the refuge island crossing that's out there now. I think if dedicated bike lanes, I think, as far as the plan goes, dedicated bike lanes are probably selected there because of the importance of this corridor. It does receive a high volume of bike traffic. So the goal would be to have a dedicated space there. So, but when you get into the engineering feasibility, that's when, you know, the wishes in the plan have to meet the reality of the roadway situation. So widening is not likely to occur. And the only other option then would be some kind of lane reconfiguration. So that would require the removal of that center turn lane. So that kind of change would require some traffic analysis to see what the impacts would be. So we can't just remove features like that. We have to, you know, do some studying ahead of time to figure out what the impact would be. You know, how does that affect turning traffic? How does that affect the potential for crashes? You know, as we make those changes, we're obviously impacting you know, other operations on the road as well. So how does all that play in? So, and that's something we do on a regular basis with other projects is, you know, we're doing traffic analysis to see how proposed changes will impact the roadway function. So that would be the case here as well. We would need to have some kind of analysis performed.
So as I'm looking at the time, and we've gotten through just the 3 top responses, which I think is great. I wasn't sure we'd get through that much. It sounds like Northwest Connectors, for the most part, those pieces are underway and will be happening. On Renolda Link, if we submit this as, you know, the committee has discussed and we feel like this is a priority area, what would then be happening? A feasibility study to determine how to deal with this segment, or what action steps would happen from our recommendation?
Sure. So yeah, I think, you know, the funding would be the issue. So we don't have funding for this, so we would have to you know, request, you know, either through the MPO, through federal sources, or through local sources, some funding, and that's where the city council would certainly get involved with. You know, this group could make the recommendation, and city council would make the final call on if this was a project that they supported as well, and if we had the funding to do so. Then yeah, it's, you know, especially segment 1 on this section. You know, there would certainly need to be some traffic analysis performed there to see what could be done if we want to do bike lanes. And then taking a step back even is, you know, do we want to pursue, is it the bike lane, the main route that's identified within the bike plan recommendation here, or is it the bike boulevard route that we would want to pursue? So I think that's a topic for this group to discuss as well, is, you know, how do you feel about that alternative, that bike boulevard route, again, which is going to serve a different group. And I think this committee, you know, knows as well as anybody what those different groups of cyclists are and what your individual comfort levels are with riding on certain roadways. And that's the kind of feedback that would really help is, you know, which of these routes do we want to pursue, and how do they compare with each other?
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just comment on that real quick?
Yep.
You know, my thoughts instantly, you know, I kind of, you know, we're bound by the lane configuration and everything. And I believe, you know, to speak about the 2 different user groups, I think the folks that are comfortable on Renolda are using it already and will probably continue. But, you know, I think you know, this bike boulevard, you know, with COVID, you know, we've had that surge and rise in, you know, cycling in general with a bunch of less experienced users. So to me, as it goes for value for the city and the community, I think the bike boulevard could be a better option to focus on. You know, that I ride through that section all the time, and it definitely is a roundabout for the person that's commuting and really trying to get somewhere quickly. But for the person that's trying to get to town, get out on a bike and go and leisure and be comfortable, that to me, that would be the spot to really focus on. I think we could get a lot more bang for our buck with that, maybe. I don't know, it's just kind of a thought that just kind of popped in.
No, I agree. And I think
I would agree with Michael on that. I had the same thoughts as he was saying.
Oh,
And one thing I would note about the plan is that, you know, we have those bike boulevard recommendations throughout the community. It's not just this one corridor. And I think that's a kind of a larger kind of universal discussion for this group to have is, you know, which user groups are we really focusing on? And is that are those bike boulevard options good options for us to pursue throughout the community and not just this one area? Kind of, Michael, your comments are well taken on that. So I know one of the maps within this recommendation section actually is a possible bike boulevard network. So I would encourage folks to take a look at that as well and see within that proposed network which of those might be priorities for you.
Okay. So it definitely sounds like we're going to have a part 2 discussion on this. Continue this at the July meeting. Any other comments before we close out? I know we're up past time. Go ahead, AJ.
I just, knowing we have a lot of information to get through with all of these projects, Matthew, I don't know that it's already compiled in a way that you could easily send it to us, but if there's a way, I guess, before next month's meeting to send out updates on what studies or work is already underway, if there's a chance for us to review it ahead of time. I don't know if that would help us get through this list. It's certainly important to discuss them, but just knowing there's a long list of these to get through.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I could put something together. It may not have, you know, some of the other, it would be similar to what I shared today. So, you know, kind of what projects are underway and then what the needs would be for some of the other corridors. So it might just be a bulleted list of the projects and then work that's underway, but I can certainly.
Yeah, certainly not trying to put more work on you, but, you know, if there's an opportunity for us to review that and maybe spend the time asking questions about those projects, that might be helpful.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, AJ. I think it'd be good to have a little homework and spend our hour in a little more in-depth conversation. We're going to have the pedestrian plan also coming up soon. That'll be in the July. Just to review that one more time and make sort of the official recommendation from our committee. I know we've all looked at it, and I think most of us have attended one or more of those meetings and reviewed it, but we do need to chime in on that. Sure thing. Okay, we are at 10:05, so we'll reconvene and pick this back up again in July. Thanks for all of your input and for the time you've spent looking into these. It is a lot, but I think once we get these into motion, we'll have a lot to feel good about too.
I wanted to ask real quickly, was there a resolution done by the city council for Judy Wallace, and was there a presentation done for her or to her?
There was not, no. So that's something we'll still work on that, but yeah, it didn't work for the timing for this current meeting. Yeah. But we'll pursue that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you all. Have a great month. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Welcome, Carol.